Hey everybody, it's Galmadex and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'll be playing another Arena Cube Draft. We've only got about one more day before the Arena Cube Drafts will be heading out. So we're going to be able to make sure to get all we can in. And so we'll have an Arena Cube Draft today and an Arena Cube Draft tomorrow morning. So without further ado, check out what's in our Pick 1 Pack 1 and see what we'd like to take here. So not the most exciting pack to me personally here. A lot of just like role fillers. Like I don't love pick one pack one and Obliterator, but if you end up with black being super open, you can try to do mono black. Night Pack Amateur is fun if you have a lot of instant speed stuff. There's like a Wrath if you end up in control. Filler Cheats solid in any land based deck. Or most decks really, it's pretty fine. Siege Gang Commander I think is pretty great for any red deck. Like it's great in Rakdos Sacrifice, it's great in mono red, pretty good in like Boros or Gruul. Might just start with the Siege Gang Commander here. But nothing super stands out to me as the best card here by far or anything. I'm going to try a Siege Gang Commander. I do like this card a lot. Just an army with a can, and the army can be used as a bunch of individual little removal spells as well, 2 damage apiece on all those little goblins. So we've got a pretty great follow-up to it between Bone Crusher Giant and Innistrad Predator. Bone Crusher Giant is just a really good card for any red deck yet again. Nice flexible card that's both a removal spell / burn spell and a big threat for its mana cost. You get Stomp at 2 mana to do 2 damage to any target. It's unpreventable as well. And then for only 3 mana, you're getting a 4/3 that deals damage to anybody who targets it. So if your opponent has to use removal spell on it, they're still going to be taking damage. So really great. A really great cost on both of those effects, especially slapped onto the one card there. I think Bone Crusher Giant's just a really efficient card, and I'm going to take it over Innistrad Predator here, even though Innistrad Predator would be a pretty solid follow-up to Siege Gang Commander for like Rakdos Sac, but at that point, the Meat Hook Massacre would be as well. We'd probably take the Meat Hook Massacre over Innistrad Predator. This card's ridiculous. A board wipe that also drains a bunch of life from your opponent and keeps that static ability around for as creatures continue dying throughout the game. But I think Bone Crusher Giant is just the best deal out of all of those cards. It's a pretty ridiculous rate. Now we're at pick 3. It's going to be a little less clear. We could just take Thundering Rebuke and stick to red because we are definitely wanting to be red as part of this deck. We could also just take Mecha Godzilla. That'll slot pretty nicely into anything we end up being. It's a nice colorless creature. And it's pretty much a must-kill threat quite quickly, even though it gets abilities chosen at random. Whatever abilities you stack onto it, once you get 2 or 3 of them, it starts getting quite threatening. Off color, we have Restoration Angel, which could be from a Siege Gang Commander. We can blink the Siege Gang Commander, bring it back, and get more goblins. There's Brassic's Contempt, which is just great interaction in black, and Shield Dread, which is a fun reanimator kind of card. I think I'm just on Thundering Rebuke here. I know it's a little bit of a boring pick, but these other cards are solid, but I don't think anything powerful enough to commit to a second color yet. Alright, now we're seeing a lot of black cards and a lot of white cards, and they are both good. Bastion of Remembrance makes a lot of sense for a sacrifice deck, getting that Blood Artist ability to drain your opponent for life whenever one of your creatures dies. Murderous Rider is just a great black card in general for a variety of decks. A removal spell and a lifelinker on one card. Fatal Push is the cheapest removal spell, very efficient. 1 mana to destroy something that costs 2 or less, or if one of your cards left the battlefield, it'll destroy something with 4 or less. And then in white we have Angel of Sanctions, the removal spell on a stick, and Amiria's Call, the land with the 7 mana cycling ability if you draw it late game to create 2 4/4 Flying Angels. Use that as a win condition. Cathar's Crusade's solid too, but it doesn't have any immediate impact by itself, so I'm not super duper high on it. I think I'm just going to take Murderous Rider here. I think it's the best card in the pack. If you can't tell already, I think the adventure cards in general are just ridiculous. And yeah, Black-Red Sack definitely looks open. We see a Blood Artist here, which I think is the best card in this pack just in general. If you're in a deck with a lot of creatures, anytime your opponent board wipes you, you're still going to deal a bunch of damage to them, or if you're just doing a lot of your own sacrifice trickery, this Blood Artist will stack into a ton of damage really quickly. Pretty big fan of taking the Blood Artist here. Skyclave Shade is really good in sacrifice decks as well, because it gives you a creature you can keep recasting, as does Ebon Death. But Blood Artist is just... it's just so much damage so quickly. It's really one of the big combo pieces you want in the archetype. Now, I guess we just have Skewer the Critics here. Pretty cheap burn spell. You can often get this for just 1 red mana thanks to the spectacle cost if you damaged your opponent. I think I'm on Skewer the Critics here. Null Priest of Oblivion's fine. It's a little fun for like sort of a reanimator strategy, but in order to reanimate something with this, you have to spend 6 mana total, so you're not getting much of a discount there anyway, unless you're reanimating something that costs more than 6, which doesn't happen too often. Timuret, again, kind of a self-mill reanimator card, and Cruel Reality just always feels like it's too much mana and too slow, in my opinion, because it's pretty easy for your opponent to stave off the more important parts of these abilities for a few turns. They just sacrifice things for a little bit. Like, if you think about it, it's a 7-mana enchantment, forces your opponent to sacrifice a creature every turn, and once they can't, they have to take 5 a turn. You could kind of think of it as like a 7-mana 5/5 haste indestructible must be blocked, and that just sounds terrible. And it's kind of what it is, in my opinion. I like Elspeth's Nightmare here. It is pretty narrow, but in the positions where your opponent does have a creature with power 2 or less, and then has a non-creature card in hand, this is just an absurd 2 to even 3 for 1, because you're also exiling their graveyard if they have any graveyard synergies. Chainer's Edict is fine, but because your opponent gets to choose what they sack, it's very bad when your opponent has a lot of creatures out. I think I'm going to go for the Elspeth's Nightmare. Ooh, this is going to be a pretty easy Jadar. There are other good cards here. Mythos of Nethroi, just 3 mana instant speed, destroy a creature. Fight with Fire, 3 mana sorcery, deal 5. Or kick it late game for, what, 9 mana? To deal 10 to your opponent, or 10 to wherever you need it. These are both really nice cards, but Jadar is just so good in Rakdos Sacrifice. It spits out that zombie token every single turn, and you could just keep sacrificing it to whatever effect you want, and if you don't have an effect to sacrifice it to, you can just attack in with it, and it'll sacrifice itself, trigger your cards like Blood Artist. Alright, Callous Blood Mage is going to be another excellent pickup for us. 2 creatures on the 1 body, or just a flexible card. We can exile our opponent's graveyard if they're trying to reanimate or anything weird, or we can just draw a card off of it. Really not a big fan of this Liliana. We wheel the Immersturm Predator, really easy pickup here. Although Perilous Mirror does have a good death trigger for a sacrifice deck, but Immersturm Predator, really hard to kill this. You can sacrifice a creature to give it indestructible. Every time it attacks, it just gets bigger and exiles a card from your opponent's grave. Immersturm Predator is just a sweet card. Now we get to pick up that Shieldred. Have something at the very top end of the curve. Dread Wanderer is a really nice pickup for the strategy as well. Can return it from our graveyard to the battlefield as long as we have 1 or less cards in hand. Now, I guess I'll speculate towards Boros over Chund, but I don't think I'll be doing either. Oh, somebody's going to get a last pick Sphinx's Revelation. If they're blue-white, that's going to be sweet. Alright, we are now in pack 2. Pick 1, and there are several sweet options. I'm not going to go Field of the Dead today. I've played several Field of the Dead decks. I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to just slam Field of the Dead and start taking every non-basic at this point. Be a little awkward, but we have some cards that would work well for like a 5-color ramp deck, like Shieldred, Siege Gang Commander. We've got good cheap interaction like Bonecrusher Giant, Murder Strider, Thundering Rebuke. We could absolutely try to do the Field of the Dead thing at this point. It's not too late to pivot to that. But just because I've done it so much, I'm not going to do so. There are 2 cards in here that I think are far and away the best cards for what we're currently doing. There's Morbid Opportunist, really good with Jadar, and pretty good with any sacrifice outlets and a lot of removal. We have kind of all 3 of those things. And there's also Kolaghan's Command, which I think is just a very efficient piece of interaction. This can often 2 for 1 your opponent. Just deal 2 to one of their creatures, make them discard a card. If you're really lucky, deal 2 to one of their creatures and destroy one of their artifacts. Either of those is a 2 for 1. I think I'm going to take Morbid Opportunist. I think Kolaghan's Command is more likely to wheel, although Not sure if it will. Either way, I do think that Morbid Opportunist is just such a big synergy piece for this deck that I think it's probably more important than Kolaghan's Command, as good as that card is. Wow, now we see some really excellent stuff for the strategy. Dusk Legion Zealot is a nice expendable creature. Weaponize the monsters, another sacrifice outlet. Sedgemoor Witch can provide us a board of pests as we're casting spells. Tainted Adversary is nice because early game it's a 2-3 death touch. Later in the game you just make a bunch of decayed zombies to sacrifice and make the Tainted Adversary bigger. And then Fabled Passage is nice because it's a mana-fixing land that also potentially triggers cards like Mayhem Devil if you pick those up. Cards that trigger whenever you sacrifice a permanent period. So what do I really want here? I think I still want some more cheap stuff to play. Kind of like Dusk Legion Zealot for filling the role of another cheap thing to be sacrificing. Don't really want to take Weaponize super early. This feels like the card that's really going to wheel. Kind of like Tainted Adversary here. It feels like it's a really good role filler because it gives us a 2-drop creature and a late game bomb all in one thanks to that kicker style effect. It's like Tainted Adversary a lot there. Wow, we've got another pack with some really good options. We have Priest of Forgotten Gods. We can sacrifice multiple creatures to get some mana, draw a card, have our opponent lose 2 life. Or there's Lurrus, which is also really good for sacrifice decks because as we sacrifice our cheap cards, we can just bring them right back to the battlefield, just recast them with Lurrus. Super sweet card here. Double black and 1 in this deck. Yeah, I think those two are the best by far, but Acquisition Expert is also nice, being a 2-mana creature with a good ETB effect, and Unholy Heat for a cheap removal spell. But it's got to be Priest or Lurrus here. I don't think either of these will wheel. I think Priest is a little more exciting to me. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Lurrus is really, really good in the right deck. Another sweet pack. Bloodsheep's Thirst. 1 mana to destroy a creature, planeswalker mana value 2 or less, or you kick it, destroy anything for 4. Super good interaction. Or Glorybringer. I think I like Glorybringer better. This card's just absurd. It's a flying threat that needs to be killed and a removal spell all in one. Like, you always just tap out for this, kill one of their things, and then you have a card on the board that they have to spend one of their removal spells on. Just always a 2-for-1 in that sense. Yeah, Glorybringer's awesome. Just really love that card. It's also from Amonkhet, and I love Amonkhet, so there's that too. So we have Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, incredible follow-up to a Blood Artist. Also just really good with sack in general, creating those elemental tokens. Scorching Dragonfire for cheap removal. And Reassembling Skeleton, another great sacrifice card, but this one we are going to have to keep committing mana to bring it back. So I think I'm a bigger fan of like Chandra than Reassembling Skeleton, plus Reassembling Skeleton is more likely to wheel. Chandra also works with recasting Thundering Rebuke or Skewer the Critics, or if we manage to pick up that Kolaghan's Command or Scorching Dragonfire or any of that. Yeah, I'm pretty hyped on Chandra here. Now there's nothing for us. We could take a Demonic Tutor if we want to get a little fancy. Demonic Tutor does feel like probably a cheap enough tutor spell that you could play it in pretty much any deck. It's kind of just a 2-mana kicker to cast any spell in your deck. So if you're ever like really dying and you need to kill some kind of bomb that has 4 less toughness, and you have 4 mana out, you just go 2 black for Demonic Tutor and then 2 red for Thundering Rebuke. Yeah, kind of like a Demonic Tutor here. Hive of the Eye Tyrant would be fine too. Nice little creature land. But we'll try out a Demonic Tutor. Outer Shadowbring's a little bit slow, but quite powerful. Same with Dark Dwellers, and we don't have a lot of instants and sorceries to recast with Dark Dwellers. So I'm not super duper high on either of those, but they would both be solid pickups. I don't actually have a single mana fixing card yet, and that's a little scary when we have a double black on turn 3, a double red on turn 3. There are some moderately restricted mana costs that I really like to hit. I'm going to take the Blood Crypt here. Aghanim Awakening, another card, a bit slow, but pretty fun. But I'm just going to do my due diligence, make sure we've got some mana fixing in here. Some dual lands. Now there's nothing in our colors. I guess Valentine technically, but I'm not gonna run Valentine. All right, we did wheel the Kolaghan's Command. Unfortunately, in the same pack as the Black-Red Duel. As much as I'd love to pick that up, I really like all the Khans of Tarkir commands like Kolaghan's Command and even Salumgar's Command in the same pack here. They're just very flexible and super Super efficient 2-for-1s. Dusk Legion Zealot or Weaponize the Monsters. Weaponize the Monsters is one of my least favorite sack outlets. We already have Innistrad Predator. We have another sack outlet, right? I guess we don't. We only have Innistrad Predator sack stuff. Yeah, we should probably pick up another sack outlet. We'll take a Weaponize, I guess, over the Dusk Legion Zealot. Alright, Unholy Heat or Acquisitions Expert. Nice little Ravenous Rat style card. Just play it, make your opponent discard a card. I guess Burglar Rat. Oh, I think I like Unholy Heat here. I want to have more instants and sorceries for Chandra to be able to recast. Take a Deem Worthy here on Burial Rites. Did not wheel the Luris, unfortunately. Alright, pack 3. Pick one. What are we doing here? We see a Torben, but that's incredibly hard to cast here, and we have a lot of black cards in the deck, so it's not even super great. Obosh. Yeah, we have a good chunk of 3-mana cards to double up with this, but it's not super exciting. If we get it on the wheel, maybe. But then we have Pillar Flame, cheap removal, or Inscription of Ruin, one of these kicker cards that's very flexible. It's a Mind Rot, or it returns one of our cheap cards back to the battlefield, or it destroys one of our opponent's cheap cards. And if we kick it, we do all of that. Yeah, I've been a pretty big fan of Inscription of Ruin in the cube. I'm happy to pick it up again here. On the wheel, we'd like to see Pillar Flame or Obosh. Those are kind of the only other cards in the pack we're interested in. I guess if they're both gone, maybe somehow Crawling Burns will still be here. Alright, we've got the Mayhem Devil. We wheeled Kolagon's Command. I don't see why we wouldn't wheel Mayhem Devil here. Might be a little bit of a bold choice because Mayhem Devil is a big piece for us that we really don't want to miss out on. But I think it's infinitely more likely to wheel than Cryptbreaker or Pyromancer or Noxious Gearhulk. So if we want any of those, I think we need to pick one of those up right now. I do really like Gearhulk. Big old 5/4 Menace. Destroys something and gains you a bunch of life. Really gets you back in the game. This might be a really bold choice, but I think I'm going to read, based on how the rest of this draft has been going with Rakdos cards wheeling, that we should wheel Mayhem Devil here. And I'm going to take Noxious Gearhulk, which we probably would not. Alright, here we have a nice card to sacrifice. There's Grim Initiate if you hate Alchemy cards, and then there's Cursebound Witch, which is almost definitely better. Because when it dies, you get to pick your choice out of 3 of these cards at random to draw into your hand. So just a really good card to sacrifice, especially because it gives you some of the cards in its spellbook are also good in sacrifice decks. So definitely like Cursebound Witch here. Alright, now we have Woe Strider. Get another sacrifice outlet in here. You can sacrifice a creature for free at any time to scry 1. Really nice. Grim Lavamancer is pretty sweet. And Spikefield Hazard and Ox of Agonos are solid, but Woe Strider just synergizes the best with this deck by far. Pretty easy Gutter Bones here, right? Because Gutter Bones can keep coming back from graveyard to hand, so we can keep sacrificing it at later times. Knight of Ebon Legion and Bloodbraid Marauder are both like a little better for a general aggro deck, but I think we're going pretty hard on sacrifice effects. Godfarrow's Gift is pretty nice too, but it doesn't work well if you have a bunch of creatures that come back from the grave or a bunch of cards that bring things back from the grave, and we have a few of each of those, because it does permanently exile anything you're getting a copy of. But it is a pretty big threat, so it would probably still be fine in here. Ooh, Black-Red Pathway, Thoughtseize, Abrade, and Baleful Mastery. Incredible ways to interact with our opponent and hinder their game plan, or just a really good way to mana fix us. The best discard spell on Arena. Some of the best removal. I'm gonna be weird here. I'm just gonna take the dual land. Ooh, Captivating Crew's fun in a sacrifice deck. If you have a free sacrifice outlet, like Innistrad Predator lets us sacrifice cards without paying mana, Woe Strider lets us sacrifice cards without paying mana. If you have one of those, Captivating Crew is really good, because then you spend 4 mana, steal your opponent's creature, attack them with it, and then sacrifice it for free. It's not really good if you have to pay mana to sacrifice whatever you're stealing, because then you're going to be just committing so much mana into stealing your opponent's stuff that it's not likely to work as well. But when you have the free sack outlets, which we do, Captivating Crew can destroy some stuff. It can kick some butts for sure. Not a huge fan of Disciple or Grey Merchant in this deck in particular. I think both are generally pretty great cards, just not exactly for what we're doing. Well, we wield Crawling Barrens and Torbran out of pack 1. Really don't want to play a colorless producing land, even though I do like the ability to attack people with it. So I'll just take Torbran, but probably getting cut. We did wield a Mayhem Devil, so that went according to plan. Thank goodness. Now we can take a Grim Initiate. Nice creature to sacrifice, just 2 creatures in 1. Spikefield Hazard. Possibly getting cut here. Faceless Agent. What's our most prevalent creature type? We have 4 zombies, 7 humans, so we just pull out a human from our deck. It's probably better than Bloodbraid. No, we have so many 3-drops. Let's grab a 2-drop here, I guess. Neither of these are awesome, but I guess we have some things that come back from the grave for Stitcher Supplier. But I'm probably cutting it still. It's kind of cool with Shieldred, too. Could fill the grave for that. Alright. So if we want to play these flip lands, we can cut a land here because we've got 2 extras with the modal cards. They're both red, so we just cut a mountain here. And then 16 lands plus 2 modal flip lands. We get to cut 13 cards out of this deck. I definitely want to cut a lot of 3s, it looks like. Although Skewer's basically a 1. Inscription's a late game card. And that already looks a lot better than it was looking before when we look at it that way. I don't think Torbran's going to make the cut in this deck. If you just look at how many black cards versus red cards are in here, Torbran's not doubling that much damage to justify the really restrictive mana cost. Or Torbran isn't adding to that many cards. Demorley's a bit slow. It's a pretty great deal when you cycle it and you do get to kill something with it, but yeah, I think it's just a bit slow for me. Cut that out of here. And we have plenty of other removal that's a great deal. Kolaghan's Command 2 for 1 and Inscription to Ruin. Doing the same. Elspeth's Nightmare as well. 11 more cards to cut. Bone Crusher Giant's kind of a 2-mana instant. Toralf's Disciple's like our only 3-drop outside of Murderous Rider that doesn't like synergize directly with our deck. Because we have Mayhem Devil, triggering when we sack stuff. Woe Strider's a sack outlet. Morbid Opportunist triggers when we sack things. Callous Blood Mage gives us more cards to sacrifice. Same with the 2-drops. This is a synergistic deck here. Bloodbraid Marauder being the only one that doesn't spit out tokens or sacrifice things or trigger when we sack things outside of Bone Crusher, but we're treating that as a 2-mana burn spell down here. It's just not sorted that way. Just pretend Bone Crusher Giant's down here with Thundering Rebuke and Demonic Tutor and all that. A Lava Runner doesn't make a lot of sense here. Stitcher Supplier, I mean, yeah, Stitcher Supplier combos with Dread Wanderer or Gutter Bones, maybe. But that feels like a rarity. Probably not worth it generally. Yep, all the 1-drops are just good creatures to sacrifice early now. So we can cut all these. We still need to cut 7 more cards. I like Demonic Tutor for even just like a turn 4 Blood Artist, potentially. Maybe I'm way too high on Demonic Tutor here, but I want to try it out. How often do you get to play with Demonic Tutor? It's not often. It's banned in pretty much everything, except for cubes. Maybe the deck's a little... These cards in the deck are a little slow, like Shieldred. Like, I mean, we could even really... If I really need to, we can go aggro to the point where we cut more lands, too. Just cut these expensive cards here. Weaponize is probably my least favorite of the sack outlets, but it does potentially use our own creatures to remove our opponents, which is nice, but it's just expensive to play around with it, to toy around with it, versus all of the sacrifice abilities we can do for free without committing mana to them. Again, Woe Strider, Immerstrom Predator, Priest of Forgotten Gods. Yeah, I think I might cut Weaponize. Just to make room, I might cut Demonic Tutor. I just can't think of anything else to cut here, really. Maybe Elspeth's Nightmare is too narrow. Inscription Ruin just feels like a Elspeth's Nightmare that hits more things, potentially. Although it is a much bigger mana commitment if we want to actually do multiple of the effects. Maybe Murder Strider's a little slow for the deck. Doesn't directly synergize with anything either. We're just using it as a good removal spell. I'd rather just have all our cheaper removal here. We have 20 creatures, but we do want a lot of stuff to be able to sacrifice. Grim Initiate's probably our worst little one-mana sacrifice fodder. Our 2s are all incredible. I'm not going to cut any of those. Our 3s are all great. Maybe Blood Mage. Captivating Crew. I think with 3 different ways to sacrifice things without paying mana, Captivating Crew's gotta be... That's as close as possible for it to ever get there. If there was ever a deck that can use Captivating Crew in the cube, this would be the one. Four more cards to cut. Shieldred is very slow, 7 mana, and no immediate impact when it hits the board, so if your opponent has instant speed removal, it's just gone, whereas Gearhulk is 1 less mana, has a huge impact when it hits the board, get rid of the biggest creature of your opponent's and gain a bunch of life. Like, Gearhulk's way better if your opponent has removal, and it's cheaper. Shieldred, however, I mean, it just closes the game out if they don't. Just completely, utterly demolishes. But it's also 7 mana. Which is quite a lot. Especially for this looking deck here. Might cut Shieldred here. Cut Grim Initiate as well. Still feel like Murderous Rider. I just really love the adventure cards. Because we get to play a spell and a creature off it. Maybe if I want to keep that in, I actually just cut the Inscription. Feels a similar role. Although we could cut on Holy Heat as well. Just 1 mana, 2 damage. Make sure all our burn can do a good bit of damage. Yeah, maybe on Holy Heat. Curve's pretty low. We could probably cut one of our flip lands here. Spikefield Hazard. Kazul's Fury, though. I like that. Could be a finisher. I guess even in a sack deck, this doesn't make a boatload of sense. Sure, it gives you something to sacrifice something, but it does damage equal to the power of whatever you sacrificed, and these kind of sacrifice decks are about sacrificing a bunch of little 1/1 tokens and 2/2 decayed zombies. I think it's most of what we're sacrificing, which doesn't do a lot. Maybe we just don't even play the flip lands this time. I've really dramatically changed my opinion on the flip lands throughout this run of the cube drafts. I think I just value them really highly from back when I played Zendikar. They're like super, super sweet in like Zendikar, but when you have decks that are like constructed power level, like these cube decks, I don't know, it just feels like even though you're getting the flexibility of both halves of the card, both halves of the card are far below par of what you want to be doing. Like, comes into play tapped monocolored land and then a 3-mana fling. I don't know, I've just kind of changed my tune on them quite a bit. We still get to play 17 lands here if we cut those two. Just put a mountain back in. Although we did cut a lot of red cards, didn't we? Yeah, we did. We actually want more black sources than red now. Slap a swamp in. And it's entirely possible we could even cut a land to throw something else back in. I'm not going to cut a land and put a 7-drop in, though, like Sheoldred. But potentially something we cut could come right on back. Like Grim Initiate or something, if we want. Weaponize. I'm pretty okay keeping it as it is. Because we do have some things to do when we have a lot of mana. Even though our curve's pretty low, we have a lot of activated abilities to play around with. Like, we have Inscription of Ruin to kick. Siege Gang Commander, we want to dump a bunch of mana into throwing things around. Captivating Crew, we want to dump a bunch of mana into stealing things. Chandra's going to be recasting things, so we'll recast something for 3 mana plus cast our spell for that turn. We could Kolaghan's Command, return something and cast in the same turn. Could escape Woe Strider for 5. We can, of course, kick a Tainted Adversary for a ton of mana if we flood out. We've got a lot of things to do if we flood out a bit, and we have all these abilities on our Gutter Bones and Dread Wanderers to throw mana into. So I think I'm cool with the 17 lands here. So I'm going to go ahead and beautify the deck real quick. We'll take one final look. Alright, here is the final build of the deck. Looks like a really synergistic, pretty aggressive Rakdos Sacrifice deck. We have some great cards to trigger as our creatures die, Blood Artist and Mayhem Devil to throw damage around, Morbid Opportunist to draw cards, and we have plenty of great cheap ways to sacrifice cards. Then we have Immerstrom Predator, sacrificing creatures for free to gain indestructibility. Woe Strider, sacrificing creatures for free to scry. And Priest of Forgotten God, sacrificing creatures by tapping it to get some mana, draw a card, and have our opponent lose some life. And then we also have a suite of expendable creatures and creature tokens. We have Cursebound Witch with a good death trigger, Dread Wanderer and Gutter Bones coming back from the grave, Tainted Adversary spitting out tokens, Jadar spitting out tokens, Callous Blood Mage spitting out tokens, Woe Strider spitting out a token, and then even Captivating Crew to try to sacrifice our opponent's creatures, and even Chandra making a bunch of tokens as well. Outside of that, that's all of the great synergy stuff. Outside of that, we just have some great cards in the colors, just great removal, and great bombs. We've got like Kolaghan's Command, Thundering Rebuke, Skewer the Critics, Inscription of Ruin, Bone Crusher Giant, and Murderous Rider as our kind of interaction suite, a bunch of ways to deal damage to their creatures, kill their creatures, stuff like that. And then some late game bombs that are also sort of interaction. Noxious Gear, Hulk, and Glorybringer both kill a creature the turn they hit and leave behind a big evasive threat. So very excited about this deck. Looks very powerful to me. And I'm going to go ahead and get into the gameplay, see if I can't get a pretty nice run with it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and keep this hand. It's certainly a bit awkward. Just a 1-mana card, and then we're waiting till turn 5. But as we've seen from just looking at the deck list a second ago, there are tons of cards we can draw in the mid-range of this curve that will make this hand really good. And it's pretty hard to ship a hand like this away when you've got your mana already and you know you have the late game setup at least. That being said, it is not panning out so hot for us so far. We've just drawn another 5-drop in some lands. So it looks like we are going to get punished for the decision to keep here. Definitely going to skewer that Oracle here. Slow down their lands a little bit. Oh, they've got a Shark Typhoon coming down. Maybe we won't. Now we have Immerstrom Predator coming. Play Innistrad Predator and Glorybringer can kill Oracle next turn. Maybe we're supposed to stop Field of the Dead from going off, but we're going to have multiple flying threats here because of Innistrad Predator and Glorybringer. So I'm hoping even if Field of the Dead goes off, we can just try to get around those zombie tokens. That being said, looks like we're going to slam down a Shark Typhoon here, potentially. They have the 6 mana to do it, and then any other non-creature spell they cast is going to spit out a big flying shark token. Alright, yep. We're going to have to throw some removal at some shark tokens to keep getting in then. Cursebound Witch is unlikely to do anything on the ground here, but if I sacrifice it now, I can't get Indestructible on Innistrad Predator at a later time. As much as I'd like to draft from the spellbook, I'm just committing all my mana into Glorybringer next turn anyway, so yeah, we'll just pass turn here. Inscription of Ruin does not blow up enchantments. In Black-Red, we're not going to have anything that can deal with this Shark Typhoon. Could make them discard 2, which would be interesting. We know they only have 1 land in... well, they only had 1 land in hand, because they could play 2 per turn, they only played 1. So we would be hitting 2 non-land cards. It's got to be best to just send out Glorybringer and send in. Gotta exert to kill Oracle. But maybe we shouldn't exert. We probably actually shouldn't exert here, because we know they don't have lands in hand. The only reason they would need to keep Oracle is if they hit more lands on top, they can just go land, land. But actually, like, just pressuring them to where we have lethal next turn seems pretty big to me. They do have a land on top, but it comes in tapped. And another land, but we don't care about the zombie tokens, so that's totally fine. Yeah. I mean, basically off of Oracle here, they just got to play land for turn, essentially. They did get to draw multiple cards, which matters if the game goes long, but I think we're just trying to pressure it enough, because we have multiple ways to deal extra damage to them in our hand. We have Skewer the Critics for 3 damage, we have Siege Gang Commander for 6, 8 damage if we're lucky. Opponent Baral's Expertise, throw everything back to our hand here. Just recast Glorybringer and haste in. I guess Baral's Expertise ruins that, though. Or Shark Typhoon ruins that. They'll have a 5/5 flyer. Do we want to crack Cursebound Witch here? I don't think so. Yeah, Shark Typhoon's very annoying against us. And another Shark too. We're just not a color player that can do anything about that. Yeah, that is really bad. That just completely destabilizes our game plan to just get in for haste damage here. I think it was the correct play, because I think that's the only way we're winning this game. Like, even if we kill Oracle, sure, they wouldn't have the Field of the Dead tokens yet, but they'd still just Baral's Expertise us and crack in with this Caravan. Yeah, no. That was probably our one shot. I don't really see a way to break through all this at this point. We can Glorybringer attack, exert to do 4, but then they just block and they trade off. I guess that gets that out of the way, but then our next flyer doesn't have haste anyway. We're taking like 8 damage on the board. Yeah, no, this one's over. Got Shark Typhooned hard. We could definitely fight through the Field of the Dead, but not the Shark Typhoon. Alright, here we are in game 2. Very nice hand. Way faster than our last hand here. The mirror match. The Gutter Bones combat is on. Cursebound Witch is going to be a sweet blocker for their Gutter Bones here. Trade off and get something out of the spell book. Gutter Bones won't come back for a while. They have to deal damage to us to bring it back. Scavenging Ooze. That's going to be incredibly annoying. I might just Inscription that right now. Yeah, I think that's more than annoying enough to just kill immediately. The Gutter Bones trade. Tapped land this turn with 2 mana up and 5 cards in their hand. Pass the turn. Ooh, Bone Crusher Giant is the draw. Very sweet. We're gonna get a second red mana here for cards like Glorybringer, Siege Gang Commander. Do I want to bring Gutter Bones back? I could bring Gutter Bones back and still hold up Bone Crusher Giant. But that only brings it to hand, not to the board, so probably not. Probably just play a Woe Strider here, I guess. Scry before our next turn by sacrificing the goat that we make. You gotta feel bad for goats in reality, they're just always what's getting sacrificed. I don't know why. Probably biblical or something. Alright, we got a Captivating Crew. That is really nice, but we won't have the mana to immediately like steal their Yawgmoth. Plus it's a human, so we can't steal Yawgmoth with it. We can try to Bone Crusher Giant the Yawgmoth. Yawgmoth's a huge deal. This is actually the biggest card we missed on, we just didn't see Yawgmoth. But the best free sack outlet. Draw a card, put a -1/-1 counter on something. Really, really good with sack effects. Yeah, I'm going to keep Captivating Crew though. Could exile their graveyard with Blood Mage to make sure they don't get Gutter Bones back. Could be kind of cool. Oh nice, we do get to kill Yawgmoth. That is wonderful. Was not expecting that, but I'll take it. Oh, we didn't damage them, so we don't get Gutter Bones back. Still worth it. Yawgmoth is a really big deal. Graveyard Trespasser. Why is their deck all graveyard hate? This is just one of those little things that always makes me a little irritated. In like, in this cube, and in like Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, and Crimson Vow, it just feels like anytime they let you do anything with your graveyard, they just load the cube or the setup with so much graveyard hate that it's like, why? The graveyard strategies are not even that good in this cube. And there's just more hate for them than almost any other strategy. To discard a card to target this? Ow. That is painful. Guess we can discard the Blood Mage. That's all around, that's pretty rough. It's a really rude card. We don't have a sack outlet though, so maybe the Crew instead. I use Blood Mage to draw a card or exile their grave. Because now our sacrifice outlet's been permanently exiled. Professor Onyx.
You really want to fight me?
We have been curved out with some must-kill threats. Ooh, Siege Gang. We don't have the mana for that, though. Now they're drawing 2 cards a turn. There's just some bad news this matchup.
Not more problems.
Some bad news. Rather draw a card or put a higher power creature to threaten Professor Onyx more. Let's threaten Professor Onyx more. This like deals 4 to her, or they -3 to kill it, or they play an alternate removal spell, take a couple damage from its ability at least. So they're going to +1 Professor Onyx still. Draw more cards. We do have the Skyclave Shade in the grave. We could exile grave with Blood Mage. They have that 1 card we know is coming back. And they're green-black, which means they're like graveyard synergies too. Scrap Heap Scrounger in grave as well. It's starting to get pretty likely we exile their grave instead of drawing a card. Got Old Rutstein to chump block Bonecrusher Giant if they want. Solemn Simulacrum, a much better chump blocker. That'll draw a card when it dies. They can also double block our Bonecrusher with a 1/4 and a 2/2 to kill it. And they'd only lose 1 creature. We can Siege Gang Commander now, but not doing anything with it this turn. Well, I guess let's kill Old Rutstein here. And here I am with the hypocritical main deck Graveyard Hate. Because it's just everywhere. So we're pretty much out of cards here. So feels like the game's already in the bag in their favor. Just a very traditional resolve a Planeswalker with defenses on board to make sure it doesn't die. And then, you know, you draw 2 cards a turn, while your opponent draws 1 a turn. You're just going to have way more options and card advantage and all of that to take over the game. Yeah. Yeah, no. We can't get through all this unless we draw like a Glorybringer or something, get a flyer. But now they even have more, but Opportunist drawing them extra cards as well. There's absolutely no way we're breaking through on the ground anymore. Guess I should have played Siege Gang Commander instead of Murderous Rider, because that would leave me open to being able to throw damage at Professor Onyx, but even then it's not lethal. I have 3 red, so I could do 6 damage to Professor Onyx. Could do 6 damage to Professor Onyx, let them draw a card off of Opportunist. They would just plus her again. She's going to be at 8 here. So yeah, I would do 6 damage, she'd be at 2 loyalty, then they'd plus her again on their next turn, and then I could sacrifice Siege Gang Commander, do 2 more, and she'd be at 1, but still alive. So unless I played Siege Gang Commander and then top decked a mountain, but even if I top deck a mountain, I only have 7 lands out, which is only enough to activate the ability 3 times and do 6 damage still. So yeah, no,
Either way, Siege Dragon Commander doesn't kill Onyx. Just keeps her off of the ultimate, at least. Now they've got God Eternal Bonsu to draw a bunch of cards. Plus the Opportunist trigger. I hope our opponent mills out here. Down to 7 cards. Probably our best shot. So we need to hit a land to shoot Professor Onyx once to not die to the ultimate. Ooh. Or Blood Artist? I don't know if Blood Artist works. You know, we probably just die to the ultimate. Each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. So 7 times. 7 times 3 is 21. Discard 2 cards 5 times, that's 15. If we attack with Murderous Rider, I guess we've got enough life. And if we put Blood Artist on board, gain some life off that as well. Yeah, we don't have the mana to throw Goblin at Professor Onyx. Yeah, I definitely, for completely alternate reasons, should have played Siege Gang Commander last turn, because even though I can't kill Professor Onyx with Siege Gang Commander, I could have kept her off ultimate, which is really important here. I guess I get to play Gutterbones here, because I drained my opponent for a life with Blood Artist. That's actually real fancy. I like that a lot. And we make them chalk card off Opportunist. Little closer to milling out, I guess. Do the thing. Okay. Just kept clicking on it. There we go. Now it has done the thing. It is on the board, but it is tapped. And just go for it. Down to 3. Oh wait, no, because I just played a card. Oh my god. I had to hold on to the 2-1 in hand to survive there. Actually, it doesn't matter because they had Menace. Well, no it does, because we can double block there, single block there, take 1. We would be at 2 life. But if they activated Lair of the Hydra, we'd be dead. They would have lethal on board, but they could have misplayed. If we held Gutterbones in hand, they could have misplayed, maybe. We survive. But yeah, with Lair of the Hydra in conjunction, they have lethal still. So we can only block that and the Lair. Take 3 from the other 2 creatures. So even if we held the Gutterbones in hand. Yeah, I completely miscounted because I was doing the math based on the discarding 2 cards. And then I just completely realized I won't be discarding 2 cards if I played the Blood Artist. And then by the time I found out I'd be putting Gutterbones in my hand, that was completely just out of my mind. The whole discard thing. I was just like, yeah, we're taking 15, so whatever, return Gutterbones, drop it down. Yeah, we had... Basically the only way we were winning is if our opponent just repeatedly blundered. Like, not even misplay, but like major blundered there. Maybe we would be in a better position there if I didn't throw removal out so quickly and just focused on trying to get as many of my own threats out. Rather than trying to interact with all their cheap threats like the Scavenging Ooze and the Graveyard Trespasser that were harassing my graveyard. But I don't know, either way that matchup felt really bad for us. With them exiling all our grave stuff. And spitting out a bunch on the board. So we're 0-2 to start off, which feels really awful because I think this deck is pretty sweet. So super unfortunate. Just the first game had a pretty slow starting hand against a pretty balmy deck, Field of the Dead and Shark Typhoon getting active. Round 2, I think that was just a bad matchup in general. But round 1 was definitely like, just kept a bad hand, got punished for that one. Round 2, probably should have taken some alternate lines, just got more aggressive or something. Mono green so far. Maybe completely mono green. We're just going to go ahead and play our Mayhem Devil here turn 3, I think. Because they do have a food token there. Whenever they sacrifice that food token, we get to do 1 damage to any target. Which is fancy. Plus, it's the highest power creature we can get out outside of Bone Crusher Giant. So this is putting a high power creature out and a nice synergy card. Timeless Witness. They do sacrifice that, so we get to do 1 damage. But that's an 0-2, so it's not enough, so we'll do 1 to their face. Timeless Witness bring back the Lina Worlds, I guess? Or Abundant Harvest? A little weird here. Abundant Harvest it is. We draw into a Thundering Rebuke. Do 4 damage to something. Don't really want to. They can just bring that back from the grave anyway. I just want to attack. Maybe kill the goose, actually, to keep them off mana. I think I would rather play the priest than any of my other creatures here, except for maybe Bone Crusher. But I'm not going to play adversary. So I go priest and rebuke, or I go Bone Crusher Giant. I guess Gilded Goose doesn't make them any mana anymore. It only makes mana when they sack a food. So yeah, we'll just play Bone Crusher Giant then. Garruk Unleashed. Is Planeswalker? Yeah, this shoots Planeswalkers. So Garruk is not long for this world. Guessing a -2 here to get a 3/3. Have Garruk be at 2 loyalty. That is the case. This destroys Planeswalkers as well. Could destroy Garruk and the 3/3 beast, and then we can attack it and they can't kill any of our creatures. Yeah, I kind of like that as well. Lets us keep attacking in with these high power creatures. I mean, we could do that without killing Garruk, but then Garruk would make another 3/3 next turn. Just get it out of the way right now. They're down to 9 now. Abundant Harvest getting recast for a land, another forest. Masked Vandal coming on down. 1/3 blocker. Play Morbid Opportunist before attacks here, so we draw a card as they kill our stuff. They double block Bone Crusher Giant here. Make a food with Gilded Goose so that if they top deck a land next turn, they can return Timeless Witness. I think I attack all to keep the pressure on, as much as I'd love to have Mayhem Devil still around when Priest of the Forgotten Gods goes off. Probably better to push in more damage, because if we attack with both, they're going to double block one of them, and the other one's going to get through, so we actually deal damage that way. Ooh, are we getting through for 4 with Bone Crusher Giant, or are they going to chump? We're getting in for 4. Alright, sweet. So I could have killed Masked Vandal instead of the Timeless Witness to get them to not be able to eternalize it. But I do like getting more power off of their board. Because if they just spend next turn, if they play a Forest and internalize their Timeless Witness, then that means Gilded Goose is going to be tapped. They're going to have 2 blockers out, so Priest of Forgotten Gods plus Tainted Adversary I think is just lethal. If they just spend this turn making a 4/4. Oh no, Kogla. Oh... It's not good, but thanks to Morbid Opportunist, it's not that bad, and Glorbinger's a great draw. Glorbinger's lethal with Priest, actually. Yeah, Glorbinger was a sick draw here. Just attack, sack it to the Priest for the final 2 damage, and there's the concession from our opponent, 1 and 2. Maybe it would have been better to kill Masked Vandal. They were mono green, so I wasn't really expecting much removal. But killing Masked Vandal is way better if they have the removal, because that's the only way where I get concerned that they're going to have enough time to maybe play the 4/4 and whatever they recur off of it. And they did have the removal there. But we did get a lucky top deck to get out of that one. Here we are now in game 4. Pretty sweet opening hand. We are on the draw, though. It's going to come out a little slowly. We're playing against the blue deck here. Island into Dragon Skull Summit. I like just playing the Priest first here. Maybe we play Adversary first if we want to just get in for damage quickly. But Priest when we have Chandra next turn is really good. Like if they tap out for a creature here, we're going to be living the dream. Because we just sacrifice the Chandra tokens. And even if they don't, I mean, Priest Chandra is still ridiculous. Oh yeah. This is going to be insane. Priest Chandra is going to be lovely. That is Grixis from our opponent. Yeah, so they play a creature and it's tapped, so I even get to get in with the elementals for damage. And I get to use the Priest mana to play the Tainted Adversary this turn. Sacrifice any number of players lose to life sack creature, so just them. Submit 1, sack. They sack the Disciple, we draw a card, we get 2 mana, we get to dump out the Adversary. And next turn we just do it all again if Chandra's still on the board. But they probably shoot the Priest. Yeah, shoot the Priest. Easier to kill than the Chandra for sure. We hit a Woe Strider here, another great way to use our elemental tokens. Probably the play here. Although we could hold up a Kolaghan's Command. We'll hold that up through combat at least. Down to 12. Here's Woe Strider. They have a counterspell for it. They have 2 mana up. Like a nope. Could have removal for it, but we still get to sack both the elementals first. Yep, sack the elementals then. Morbid Opportunist. Well, only need to sack the 1 then. Because I'm keeping that Opportunist. That card is great with Chandra as well. We're just going to draw a card during our end step every turn, at minimum.
Don't worry, I brought company.
Yeah, this game has literally just been Chandra the game. It's just Chandra synergizing with everything in her deck. To absurd degrees. Well, Acolyte of Flame just going wild with the elemental tokens. Reckless Stormseeker from our opponent. 3/3 Haster, we can just kill that with a multitude of options.
Go get him.
Skewer and hold up a Kolaghan's Command, or we can use Murderous Rider and cast it. Kind of like Murderous Rider cast it here. And we get to draw a card pre-combat too. Just a land. This card is sick. This seems like it's going to be a Commander staple too. I haven't played Commander in years, but it seems like great card draw for black in a game with a lot of players like Commander, where a lot of turns are happening, and there's quite often creatures dying. So that's another victory. That's 2-2 now, turning things around here. This hand is unfortunately going to have to be a mulligan. We just can't guarantee that we're hitting land, especially not a red land. If we hit any land, Blood Artist into Woe Strider is a pretty threatening start, but really need to hit the mountains pretty soon after that, so I'm going to go ahead and mulligan this. This is a lot like our game 1 hand, which we saw how that turned out. It was just too slow, let our opponent set up before we could find lethal. But I think I have to keep this. I don't think we can afford to mold a 5. Well, the hand is still pretty slow. Not going to be doing anything else to turn 5 here. Opponent starts with a treasure map, so they're the kind of deck that wants to just be setting up in the early turns, and we are going to be giving them the time to do that. So I am already quite worried about how this match is going to go. Yep, Celestius 2. This is the kind of deck we want a really fast hand to just punish them for, and we've gotten the opposite. We cannot really go toe-to-toe with the late game decks. You know, turn 5 later, our best plan in these matchups is to hit our aggressive cards. We do have a lot of 1, 2, 3 mana creatures, and if we don't hit them in these matchups, we're gonna have a rough time. So I'm very scared here. Another 5 mana card here. Means we've got nothing to play still turn 4, just attacking for 2 and hoping for the best. Kolaghan's Command is solid in this matchup, but I think we have to try to put more pressure out right now. I think I'd rather Siege Gang Commander than Glorybringer, because they've just got all this mana up to be countering stuff. I think Glorybringer is the stronger card by a little bit. And Siege Gang Commander would draw a Counterspell or a Wrath if they have one of those. Yep, Counterspell it is. Throw it back on top of our library. Well, they know it's coming here. We'll just try it again. So the main reason I think Glorybringer is stronger than the Siege Gang Commander here is because of the fact that if it resolves, it's getting it immediately for damage. So it plays like really well against a Wrath or Sorcery Speed removal from our opponent, whereas Siege Gang doesn't. Because we just tap out for Siege Gang, it goes to their turn, and then they can do their Wrath or whatever. But Glorybringer, if it resolves, it's like a guaranteed 4 damage on the spot, which is very nice. Bone Crusher Giant is the draw. That's pretty sweet. Because of their treasure tokens, they still have 5 mana up here, and it's mana of any color. So they can very much still have a counter spell. Do we want to still just run out the Glorybringer? Because, like, if it gets countered, we might be able to Gear Hulk next turn whenever we get our 6th mana. So we're still sort of playing into the counters, or playing around the counters in a way, by having the slightly bigger threat next turn. We could also just Thundering Rebuke the Titan and play a 4/3 Bone Crusher Giant. Let's go for the Glorybringer. Go for the glory, fingers crossed. Just draw another counterspell off, Discover the Formula. So, Glorybringer does not resolve. No. Alright, that's game. Lear, Disciple of the Drowned. All of their cards in grave have flashback now, meaning they have 1, 2, 3 counter spells up again. More than enough mana from the treasure tokens. We don't have anything that can't be countered. Their counter spells are a combined total of 6 mana, which they have. So we would have to cast 4 things to get something to resolve here. Can't do that. Rough stuff. Really sad to see this deck go 2 and 3. But at least it's not an 0-3 here. I just think that this deck was really sweet synergistically. We just drew some pretty poor hands, unfortunately. It's just some pretty slow hands in the matchups where we needed to be pushing our aggressive cards. In this game and in the first game, we cast nothing till... Well, we cast 1 card till like turn 5, and if you look at the curve of our deck, that is not the average hand. So I'm going to go ahead and... Like, usually I do try to be kind of contemplative and looking back and seeing, like, what are the things that we could have done differently? What kind of things about the deck could have gone wrong? But I think that legitimately a large part of what went wrong here was just due to randomness. Like two games in this round just being 1 drop into 5 drop being the hand is insane with this giant chunk here at 2 to 4. So really sad stuff. Unfortunate to see there. What could we have done better though? Definitely think I could have played better. Just trying to play more aggressively in the second round that we lost against the green-black deck that was like playing cards to harass our graveyard. Our best shot there was probably to just dump out our creatures and get as much aggro out as possible there, because just trying to dump removal spells and their stuff there didn't work out for us. We had to discard cards to do it from the ward abilities and all that stuff, so we just went really down in card advantage. Then Liliana really sealed the deal there. Maybe if we just played all our creatures out, we'd have enough pressure to potentially kill Liliana. So maybe there was that, but I don't think round 1 or round 3, I don't think there was any lines that win those games. Just a slow start against some decks that really go off after some slow turns of setup. So yeah, that is going to unfortunately end today's draft, but I will be doing 1 more Arena Cube draft tomorrow. As you can see, the cube drafts are still going on for 26 more hours at the time of recording, so by the time this video is up, they'll be going on for another probably 18-20 hours. So if you want to get any Arena Cube drafts in yourself, now is the final chance to do it before they are off of Arena. But that is going to end today's video. We've got... After the cube drafts leave, we've got Innistrad double feature coming up a week from when the cube drafts leave, and then Kamigawa Neon Dynasty a couple weeks after that. So some cool draft stuff on the horizon, even if it will be the end of the Arena Cubes. So once again, I'd just like to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.